Got it. Good afternoon. Last Smoothie Social of 2020, December 29th. Happy New Year to everybody. Today, we are discussing funding your future. We've got our special guest today is our Director of Financial Aid, Ms. Ana Borjas. And we're going to be going through all things financial aid. I'm sure she'll cover briefly what you'll do before you're here, but then we want to go into a lot of in-depth of how we're going to support you through your time while you're enrolled at SCNM. Real quick basics, right? We invite you to turn on your cameras. Thank you all for everyone who's already participating. We love to see your faces. We want this to be interactive. Feel free to turn off your mic or turn on your microphones and ask questions as the need arises, or if we're on a topic you want to jump in. There is also a chat bar. So by all means, open up and use that chat bar. If you're a little shy and you just want to put a question out there, we'll make sure to keep an eye on that and get your questions answered. Real brief introduction. My name is Jane Borjas. For those of you that don't know, I am one of our admissions representatives helping you guys cross that finish line. Once you've submitted transcripts, you're working on that application, we're going to make sure that you get through a successful interview and get you to join one of our future classes. I work with candidates with last names of M through Z. So anybody in that category, I'll definitely be here to assist you. Jody's my counterpart. She'll introduce herself in a moment. But of course, if she's not available, I am ready to assist in any way possible. Some other fun things about me. I've been at SCNM now for just about a year and a half. I returned to SCNM in June of 2019. And right back into this admissions rep role. I actually worked at SCNM from 2007 until 2013, and then took a different unique job opportunity. I was part of event securities, and I was involved with the Super Bowls, concerts, football games, NFL football games, college football games, so much wild and fun, crazy live entertainment for several years there. I mean, when someone says Super Bowl, how can you say no to that opportunity? So I got to go off and have a unique experience there for a little while. It is great to be back, though. It's nice to be settled back in Arizona after all that travel, and right back here in this community that's so enriching and amazing. I love supporting you guys, helping you grow, and really change the future of healthcare here. So a little bit about me. Jody, take it away.
All right, I started talking with my mute on, so I apologize. So I'm Jody Durham, so I work very close with Jane. The only difference between the two of us, I work with first at the beginning of the alphabet, A through L. So we do exactly the same thing. I've actually been with SCNM a little over 14 years. I came on board in 2006, absolutely love it. Originally from kind of the customer service role. When I did move out here to Phoenix, my family and I went into the mortgage business. This was back in 2002, 2003. I worked in the mortgage business for about 3 years, decided that that was too stressful and I was too young to be that stressed all the time. So I decided to get out of it and do something different. Applied to an ad for a naturopathic medicine as far as a front desk person. Had no clue what this was, but it sounded fun. And so I applied, and I've never been sorry for doing that. I absolutely love what I do. I love watching the students grow from the time they work with their prerequisites all the way to graduation. And then becoming alumni, we still stay in touch. So seeing our students succeed through the program is as rewarding to Jane and I as it is to you. So welcome, thanks for joining us. So that's a little bit about me.
Very nice. So the reason that I was late was I was creating this special formula smoothie today. I had this holiday spice thing in mind. I missed out on gingerbread cookies and making a gingerbread house and stuff. For some reason, I've been craving it. So today I tried to create my own homemade ginger spice type of flavor, right? So here's my smoothie. You can't really see much of the color. Actually, here it is. It's in one of my jars because I kept shaking it and shaking it and shaking it. But here's what's fun. It's here's what I used in it. I used, of course, cinnamon, ground ginger, nutmeg, black pepper, believe it or not, ground black pepper, and I had a little bit of cardamom. So these unique spices. It was also on my list. I was supposed to use allspice, but I don't have any. whatever that is, and then cloves. So I was missing a few key ingredients, but this is so good. It's so fun to have just a unique, different flavor rather than my usual blueberry or whatever. So I thought that was kind of neat, just to try something different. So that's what I have today.
I'm Jane. So see, I'm not as bold as Jane is. I just stick with my normal. This is pineapple, strawberry. I think there's a little bit of cantaloupe in here. I did use some cranberry juice because I didn't have any coconut water or milk. So I did use a little bit of cranberry juice. So it's kind of got that sweet and tart taste. Sometimes I'll try a little flaxseed in there. I've done that before. That's probably as adventurous as I get. So yeah, but it's good. It's good. Anybody else have a smoothie out there that they'd like to share? No?
I love the green smoothies. I like sticking spinach and kale in mine, and I like it to be super green so I can sneak my veggies in there.
Yeah, exactly. Usually I have spinach quite a bit, but it started going bad, so I tossed it yet last night. So I didn't have any
It goes by
this time.
super quick. But basically
Yes,
it's the
it
same as
does.
yours. Pineapple, mango, strawberry, whatever.
See, yeah. I like the fruit. So anybody else?
That's all right.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to get started. We always do a core value or talk a little bit about a core value. We have 5 core values that we stand very strong on, and this time I picked we do the right thing. So we feel SCNM is working hard to continue to deliver quality education and effective patient care. This means, of course, campus safety. It means necessary precautions and safety with the COVID-19 that we're up against right now, on putting all of our classes online, doing telemedicine. We're doing tons of telemedicine nowadays, and keeping as little amount of people off campus as we possibly can. Our main goal is that our students, faculty, and staff are safe throughout this pandemic. So we feel that by keeping people off campus and doing telemedicine so we don't have that one-on-one contact for now, that will change eventually, but for right now, that's what we're doing, and we do the right thing is probably one of my favorite core values. So
Love it. Thank you for sharing, Jody. You're absolutely right. I respect our executive council so much because they're constantly looking at the future and how are we going to continue to stay safe. And it definitely calls upon some tough decisions. We all know that the goal was to be back on campus, at least for hybrid, starting in January, starting next month. And the doing the right thing meant that we're not going to do that quite yet. So good choice. Thank you, Joe.
Yep, I agree. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our Director of Financial Aid, Anna Borjas. So again, like I said, she's our Director of Financial Aid. I've had the pleasure of working with Anna since 2006 as well. So she's been around as long as I have. So we've become friends even outside of SCNM. So I love her dearly. So, but she also obtained a master's degree in 2015 to advance her knowledge and expertise in financial aid. So I don't know what we would do without her. She is amazing. So Anna, do you want to share anything else about you or anything with your hobbies? Would just share something.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you, ladies. So anything else? One thing I just share with students, I started in financial aid as a federal work study student at the University of Arizona. That's my alma mater, and just fell in love with the profession upon graduating. And so definitely since 2001, I've been doing this, and there's never a dull moment in this profession. I love it. There's always opportunities to improve, to grow, to learn. As Jody mentioned, I decided to go back to school after so many years of being out. And it definitely just solidified that I love being in higher ed. I love helping students, and that's just really the center of our department, is helping students and ensuring that we're providing you guys with the maximum resources that we possibly can. So hopefully today's meet and greet is, an opportunity for you guys to definitely ask questions, and this is the first step, right? It's going to continue until even past graduation. So other than that, I was born and raised in Mexico City, so I'm fluent in Spanish, bilingual, and so as you guys get to know me, you'll see that my culture is very well extended even in my office. So it's something that the SCNM community knows very well of me. So welcome, and it's my pleasure to be here.
Very nice. It's so nice to see you. It's so tough not being on campus as often as we used to be.
I know.
So I'm going to start with the basics, right? So the first question is federal aid available? So I think the answer is yes, but can you elaborate a little bit more on that as far as an individual, do they need to identify their parents' income, things like that? How do they apply for aid at SCNM?
Yeah, so the first thing, very simple, is in order to be eligible for financial aid, you need to submit the free application for federal student aid. So just like undergrad, if any of you took out any type of financial aid, SCNM is an approved Title IV institution. Therefore, we're allowed to provide federal student loans, private student loans, federal work study, and of course, scholarships. But in order to determine eligibility, you all will need to submit a FAFSA, and that's what will let us know whether or not you're eligible to receive Title IV aid. And so the biggest things that we are looking for to determine eligibility is if you're a U.S. citizen or permanent U.S. resident, if you have a valid Social Security number, and you're not in default with prior federal student loans. And so these are things that myself and Claudia Rangel, which I am sure many of you have already been in contact with. Claudia is the financial aid advisor, and she may have already reached out to many of you, but that's what we're looking for on your FAFSA, to make sure that you are eligible to receive federal aid. Now, if you're not eligible to receive federal aid, so perhaps for just different reasons, that is something that Claudia and I will take the time to address with you individually, just to kind of see what's going on and what other opportunities there are for you. So just because you may not be eligible for Title IV aid doesn't mean that it stops there, right? We're going to really have that in-depth conversation to see why you're not eligible and what other resources we can provide to you.
Awesome, awesome. So I'll go on with that. So, Anna, and I've had a lot of students ask this as well. What if a student feels or thinks that their parents make too much money to qualify for financial aid?
Yeah, and I think Jane asked that, so I apologize for skipping that question.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay.
So as a graduate student, I don't want your parents' information anymore. That's it. So you are automatically independent in the eyes of the Department of Education. So as a graduate student, you're actually enrolling as a first professional student in the graduate level program. And so really it's going to be based on your income. So I will say that if you have a family, if you filed as head of household jointly, there's a spouse, there are dependents, I will definitely need their information. The FAFSA, the biggest component of the FAFSA is your income information. So depending on what you filed 2 years ago, so I'm going to take this year for anybody entering this spring 2021, you're completing the 2021 FAFSA with 2018 taxes. And so again, a lot of the information to determine eligibility financially is going to come from your 2018 taxes. If you're enrolling for fall 2021, you're completing the 21-22 FAFSA with 2019 taxes. So it's always 2 years back. So again, no parents' information. I don't even want you to contact them to get information. It is your information only that I will be reviewing or addressing additional questions.
Very good.
Actually, so I think that sparked another question, because I didn't realize how far off the timeline was. You're using 2-year-old tax returns, but for a lot of our students, they were a dependent of their parents 2 years ago. So what would they use?
They would simply, if you did not file taxes in 2018 or 2019 respectively, then you will simply state on the FAFSA, will not file, meaning you didn't file taxes, and that's okay. Believe it or not, you will still be eligible for the maximum amount available in student loans. And the big reason is because as a graduate student, the primary source of funding are direct unsubsidized loans, which are non-need based. Therefore, your income does not matter for non-need based aid. So in undergrad, it's a little different because you're offered Pell Grants, you're offered subsidized loans, maybe other types of grants that are based on need and reason why parents' information is crucial. But graduate level, it's totally different. Unfortunately, the Department of Ed does not offer as many types of aid as they would for undergraduate students. So it's a little different, but nonetheless, the type of aid is still the same.
Awesome. Since we're on that topic, we'll stay on that topic a little bit. So how much does a student normally receive from financial aid?
So there's, I'll give the simple answer and then I'll go a little more in depth so this makes sense as you go through the program. So SCNM's cost of attendance for the 2021 academic year, which we're currently in, allows students to borrow aid for tuition, fees, and living expenses. Tuition is $358 per credit. So every quarter is going to change slightly depending on how many credits you're enrolled in. And the maximum you can receive per quarter for books and living expenses is $8,500. So this is standard. This is SCNM's cost of attendance. Numbers are not going to change. Again, if you're enrolling for this academic year, the cost of attendance can change every year. So there is a tuition and fees committee that reviews the cost of attendance on a yearly basis. And we look at many, many components from tuition, institutional fees, and also the cost of living in Maricopa County. So we definitely look also at our sister schools, at other first professional schools to ensure that we're in line with those schools, because we do have a responsibility with the Department of Ed to ensure that our cost of attendance is reasonable for the type of program that we offer. But every quarter you will be awarded and offered that maximum amount if need be. One thing that Claudia and I strive, and this is just part of educating you guys as much as we possibly can, is we provide students ongoing counseling throughout the program to work with your personal budgets and financial aid projections. One thing that I take very seriously is making sure that you understand federal limits, the cost of attendance, how much you can borrow, because the last thing we want is for you to be surprised and saying, how did I borrow this amount of money, right? Where did this money come from? I wasn't even aware that I was borrowing this much. It's a common question that I've always heard from undergrad studies, right? This is going to be different. We're going to have ongoing conversations. There's going to be an expectation that you guys really review your finances on a quarterly basis to make sure, how much am I borrowing? Do I need to borrow the full amount? Because honestly, I'm going to tell you this, at a graduate level, if you don't need to borrow that amount of money, don't borrow it, right? I know it's there, and this is one thing I heard when I was an undergrad, that they would say, oh, the money's there, government's giving you the money, just take it all, right? That's what it's there for. not realizing, well, wait a minute, I have to pay back this money, right?
Right.
This is not
Right.
free money that the government's giving me. So we're going to have ongoing conversations about your money and making sure that you're borrowing responsibly. And with that, I just want to point out there's a question on here that asked,
I was going to go into those.
SUNM will be virtual.
Yeah, go ahead.
How does-
Excellent.
Yep.
Yep, go ahead.
So how does that affect financial aid? It doesn't, right? You're enrolled, you're going to school. We continue doing our processes. Just because we're working remotely, it has not stopped anything. So you will continue to get financial aid.
Perfect. And since you're glancing at that, I was going to go in. Yeah, can you touch a little bit on what's available for our international candidates?
Absolutely. So depends where you're coming from. So I know we have worked in the past with Canada, and Canada offers federal student aid for their students. And so that is a process that I work closely with our Canadian students. We fill out forms for them, enrollment and financial aid forms, where they can request funding from their province, and that will help pay towards cost. If I have international students that are not from Canada, then options are private student loans from the US, as long as you have a cosigner who's a US citizen or permanent US resident. So you can obtain private student loans. If your government or wherever you're coming from may offer some grants, may offer some loans, I have worked in the past with those students. And sometimes it's just a matter of completing a form to notify that lender, or a guarantee of what our cost of attendance is, so that they can help out with those costs.
Awesome. So Anna, what is the earliest someone should apply, whether they're applying for fall or spring, either one? What's the earliest they should start their paperwork?
So whether you're coming in for spring 2021 or fall 2021, or maybe later, so the FAFSA for this award year, so the 2021, was released October 1 of last year. So definitely I'm going to say start filling it out, get it submitted. For the fall, the FAFSA was released October 1 of this year. So the FAFSA is released every October 1st. And as soon as that FAFSA is available, please just complete the FAFSA and submit it. This way it gives Claudia and I enough time to review the FAFSA and make sure that you're eligible, or if there's additional things we need from you, we have plenty of time to have that conversation. We usually, for the spring start, keep in mind that in order to receive financial aid, there are 3 documents that need to be completed: your FAFSA, your master promissory note, which is your contract to your rights and responsibilities as a borrower, and the entrance counseling, which is an online tutorial that will walk you through federal student aid. Those 3 items, we generally ask that you have them completed about 2 months before you start the quarter. Okay, so this way we have plenty of time to review your documentation, make sure everything's in order, and if there has to be any changes or updates made, then we have time to communicate that with you. We definitely want to make sure that we get paperwork in on time so that we can finalize the awarding process before the start of the quarter. We don't want to be awarding you when the quarter has started, and the big reason is we want to make sure your tuition is paid and you get money for living expenses on time. So keep in mind, it is just Claudia and I. We're a small but mighty team of 2, and we have a lot of students to work with. So the sooner you can get us your documentation, the better it is for us and for you to ensure that we get you your money on time.
So the soonest, there's a great question. Can you complete the FAFSA before even being offered admission to SUNM?
Absolutely, absolutely. We are also contacting with students who may be inquiring about the program. They're just curious about it, and we have a FAFSA already on file, right? So we can let them know, hey, absolutely, this is what you qualify for, and this is how much we can offer you. So if you're at the stage where you haven't interviewed, you haven't been accepted, doesn't matter. Get your documents to us, and we would be happy to review those. Of course, once we know that you're accepted into the program, then Claudia and I start the work of reviewing your documents in detail, making sure that we're not missing anything, and putting things in order to get you started for either the spring or fall term.
Awesome. I want to go back to budgeting a little bit. You talked a little bit about budgeting. Do you require a student to see you every so often, or what is the ideal time frame that a student, should they contact you or come see you once a month or once a quarter, or how does that work?
So we don't require you guys. We're not going to, force you to come see us by all means, but we highly recommend it. Again,
Okay.
I get it. I've been on, I have student loans. I've been a student, and finances is going to be part of not just your SCNM journey, but even after school, right? So the budgeting piece is just a very small piece of financial literacy. And so one thing that we do for students is we actually have financial advisors. SCNM partnered with financial advisors. They're called Thompson Financial Group, and they are experts in budgets. They're experts in even helping students post-graduation. They are currently working with our alumni, so they know and understand the student loan debt that our students may graduate with. They understand the type of debt that an investment, I will say, that they have while attending SCNM. And so really it's that beginning conversation of, let's work on a budget, your personal budget, so that you can start laying your financial foundation, right? It's so important. The last thing I want you guys to do is graduate and not have money for savings, not understand what types of loans you have, not understand a basic budget, go out there and then kind of be in this world where, okay, now what do I do, right? How do I start my business? Who do I talk to? Let's clear that up beforehand. Let's get you guys with that pre-knowledge, with those pre-resources, so that by the time you graduate, you're set. All you have to do is now take that next step, take that next journey onto opening your practice, or maybe it's working with physicians, or maybe, because we do have students in this realm, where I have alumni who come to me and say, you know what, I want to travel. I want to be part of Naturopaths Without Borders, and I want to offer my services, maybe from a mobile standpoint, right? I don't want to be in a clinical setting. How do finances differ from that, right? How do I get that started? We have so many stories from our alumni, and like Jody said, I've been here for 14 years, so I know a lot of our alumni. And as I look back and I still meet with them because they still have financial aid, I love hearing their stories and how things could possibly change, right? If they started with one idea, maybe it just evolved to another idea, and at the end of the day, they had financial questions. If my income changes, maybe it decreases, maybe it increases, how does that impact my student loan repayment? So these are things that we will help you guys with your budgets. If I don't know the answers, I will send you to Thompson Financial Group so they can assist you. And this is going to be a relationship that we'll have with you until you don't want to talk to us anymore. So there's no end date. Jody knows this. We have alumni. I mean, I even have alumni who will contact me who graduated before I started at SCNM. Yep. They graduated in 2003 and 2005, and they'll say, hey, Anna, I saw that, you're still offering services to alumni. Can I have some of those resources? Absolutely, right? So Thompson Financial Group is free of charge. You guys don't have to pay them anything. So for simply being an SCNM student and eventually an SCNM alumni, you will have those resources available to you.
Wow, that's great. That's great.
A lot of good stuff. And again, you guys are doing great with these questions. I love this. You're keeping this conversation going. We don't even need our cheat sheet over here. So Anna, can you kind of, I'm going to go right back up to Miss Ava has a question about what percentage of financial aid do students receive in comparison to scholarships or grants?
Yeah, so that's a really, really good question. So we do offer scholarships throughout each year. And so for incoming students and continuing students, we are offering scholarships. Our scholarship pool is very small though, or I should say our budget. So SCNM is a nonprofit organization and we rely heavily on donors to provide scholarship funding. So while I would love to give each of you a full ride scholarship, right, it's not possible. On average, we provide about $4,000, you know, to students. So if a student receives a scholarship, it's on average of $4,000. And scholarships will vary. So we have merit-based, which are based on cumulative GPAs. We have essay-based. We have diversity scholarships. I'm thinking of others, maybe need-based. Maybe some of the donors really want to provide to needy students. So that's where obviously I would need to look at your FAFSA to determine what the need is. So really it falls on the donor. Donors will come to us and say, we would love to contribute to your scholarship budget. And so, you know, here's X amount of funding, and this is what we would like to see in terms of application status. So again, it's a small group. It's not very large. So we're not like Arizona State University or U of A, where maybe they provide a lot more scholarships. Keep in mind that a lot of state universities have state funding or receive state funding. Unfortunately, SCNM does not. So we have to just work a little extra harder to get scholarship funding. But nonetheless, even though it may be a small budget, we try to provide as many scholarship as possible. So for example, every fall for our continuing students, we have an average of about 8 to 9, maybe 10 scholarship opportunities, and everybody can apply. So whether you're domestic or an international student, you can apply to these scholarships. And I will say this because I've said this over and over, even if you see an application for $500, guys, that's $500 that can help you towards tuition. So
absolutely,
don't look at something and be like, oh, it's only $500, I'll pass. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trust me, $500 becomes a lot of money. That's $500 you don't have to borrow in student loans or pay out of pocket. So always keep that in mind.
yeah,
Excellent advice. Absolutely. It doesn't matter if it's $100, $10, whatever. Free money is free money. That's good stuff.
that's right. That's
so
right.
Can you touch a little bit on the award itself? The next great question here on the board from Janae is it possible to pay for living expenses with federal aid alone and not actually working while in this program? So yeah, please address that one. And oh, side note, Ryan, I just sent you an email with some information about those scholarships. But yeah, Anna, if you could kind of explain how the award works and what's covering tuition and what's covering their living expenses.
Yeah, for sure. So it depends. And I will always use that word. I think that's a very known word in financial aid. And I will say this because with financial aid, we are tied by what the federal government allows us to provide you guys, right? And so I'm very transparent when it comes to numbers and financial aid. And so one thing that we tell students is we can't pay for every expense you have, right? Financial aid is available to assist towards books and living expenses. And we strive to ensure that because we know there's no housing on campus, because we know that many of you may have families outside of SCNM, right? There's groceries, there's rent, there's transportation to pay. We strive to make sure that we can provide as much as we possibly can. So it's really a matter of where's your budget, right? So if I say to you, the maximum we can provide you for living costs per quarter is $8,500, okay? A quarter is roughly about 3 months, roughly. Keep in mind, you have 11 weeks of a quarter of courses that you're enrolled in, and then you have a 2-week break. So it becomes a 13-week period. And then financial aid is dispersed once again in the new quarter. So every quarter you're getting financial aid. So if I take, I'm just going to use my calculator. I'm going to cheat over here. So if I do 8,500, divide that into 3 months roughly, it's about 2,800 a month. The question I always ask students is that sufficient, right? The challenge becomes if it's not sufficient, then we have to have further discussions to figure out why it's not sufficient. Unfortunately, that is SCNM's cost of attendance and we're limited to that amount. So this is an amount that really we need to work through, discuss, and figure out, you know, what changes need to occur in order to ensure that financial aid covers everything that you have going on. There's no right or wrong answer. I will say that there's not a precise answer I can give to you guys. It really is going to depend on your budget, on your expenses. I've had students whom we've looked at a budget and, you know, maybe they were spending on, you know, items that really aren't needed, or maybe they just won't need while they're in school, right? So that's a decrease. Maybe they've just made changes on how they do their grocery list. And I will say, for 14 years that I've been at SCNM, the biggest expense my students make is on food. It's on food because my students will buy groceries and then decide, I'm gonna eat out this week, right? And so now that's kind of like a double spending. So really, conversation with students is, how are you shopping? You know, share with me how, when you go to the grocery store, how do you shop? Do you go when you're hungry? Do you make a list, right? Do you use coupons, right? And so sometimes we have implemented a few changes, and one of them that has worked with some, not all students, is maybe the envelope method, taking cash to the grocery store, right? So if you know that you're a spender and you're like, oh, you know, I'm just gonna get this one thing, it's okay, right? Maybe limiting yourself to that. So really it becomes very personal, just to kind of learn how your expenses work and just kind of see, you know, what changes we can make. And I will say this, again, transparency, we are not here to tell you how to live. You are adults. You know, you have your own life, but know that in terms of financial aid, we are limited and we have to abide by the guidelines. So let's work with something, and as long as it works with you guys, then great, right? If not, then let's try to find some other resources.
Awesome. So on that, Anna, so I'm going to give you an example. So a student borrows the max that they can in the quarter, and now an emergency comes up. Can they borrow more in the middle of a quarter?
So it depends. So we do look at those cases individually. So it could be emergencies such as, you know, I got a flat tire, or I'm trying to think of the most common ones. I need repairs on my vehicle, right?
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Laptop crash.
Yeah.
So we do provide an emergency, an emergency funding. I just lost the proper name of it. But what that means is, if there's an emergency, we do require documentation. There could also be a medical emergency, right? So we do require documentation, and you can get what we call an advance. So say, for example, we're in mid-quarter and something unfortunately happened and you need just a little bit more cash because maybe you use some of your $8,500 to cover those expenses, then you would request for an advance from the following quarter to help you with this quarter. But again,
Okay.
It really doesn't help students a whole lot because you're taking from next quarter's funding, right? When talking about the budget, one of the conversations we have with students is, can we set money aside for emergencies? And I will say this, guys, even when you're done with SCNM, always
Uh-oh.
I wasn't sure if that was me or if that was Anna.
Nope, I think it's Anna.
We lost her. Briefly. She'll be back. You guys are great with these
You
questions.
guys are doing
today.
great with the questions. Exactly.
This is definitely a hot topic for sure. I'm going to scroll back through and answer some of these until we, oh, here she's back.
There she is. Can you hear us?
Hi, yeah, I'm sorry, did I freeze?
Okay. A little bit.
I'm sorry. The beauty of working from home, right? No, so I was just gonna say, so just know there's that emergency advance. The other thing is we do provide professional, I should say we do professional judgment to provide additional funding should you need a computer. So we do a one-time computer reimbursement. Also, we have for child or dependent care expenses, and that is a reoccurring thing. So if I have any students out there who need assistance with, because they have dependent care expenses, that is something that we can help with. And that is not taken from any other quarter. That's in addition to the 8,500. And then the other expense that we can definitely help with, which is in addition to, is for NPLEX 1 and 2. So you can request additional financial aid to cover for board exams.
Awesome.
So let's take a look at the chat bar. Emmeline brought up a great point. Do students typically find roommates through SC&M to decrease living expenses?
They can, my experience with students is some students like the roommate experience, others don't, right? It really just depends. And I've had students who will start the program without any roommates and then realize, you know what, I actually want roommates and I think it's a better option for me, or vice versa. They started with roommates and then they realize I'm not the roommate kind of person. So it just depends. I'm not saying, everybody has to look at now living with somebody, right? Let's look at your budget and see what other things can be minimized, or what things can be paid off. Maybe you have a credit card debt that you can easily pay off, and that way it will provide a little bit more income, right? So again, this is more of a one-on-one conversation so we can look at your budget. And I will say this, I will ask questions. And so I usually tell students, if you're okay sharing with us, then that's great. But I will dig pretty deep and ask questions for the sole purpose of just kind of seeing what's out there and how can we help.
Definitely.
Awesome.
I agree that I think it's your personal preference, right? If you're comfortable living with others and that shared space, I would kind of be curious to tap into our most recent fall 2020 class and find out those that are in a roommate situation has that supported them through their first quarter and stuff. So I'll see if I can do a little poll and send you guys an email later. So sticking with some of these questions, these are, again, great questions in the chat bar today, guys. Let's touch back on scholarships. So Chantel is asking about, is there a limit on the amount of scholarships she can receive money from? Can she get a scholarship from SC&M and a scholarship from her church and the Girl Scouts or all these other organizations? Hopefully that was what she was asking.
Yeah, I mean, if you have resources and you have people who are willing to provide scholarships, absolutely. I'll sign whatever paperwork I need to sign so you can get that scholarship. Absolutely. Take advantage of as many scholarship opportunities as you can. Even SC&M scholarships, there's some that won't limit you. They will allow you to obtain more than one scholarship. So that's totally fine.
Perfect. So yeah, wherever you can find that free money, get those checks, get them sent in. I like it. And so hopefully,
Right.
Michelle, that also addresses your question. Anna just responded. I think it's going to depend on how that scholarship is written and the parameters of a scholarship as to whether or not you can, if this is a sole scholarship or if you qualify for others. A little further down, Janae is asking, do students typically utilize private loans as well?
So unfortunately, yes, graduate level education. So this is the piece where it gets a lot more detailed and where I would rather, we're going to be doing, Claudia and I, a webinar separate from this one once you start the program to really look at your financial aid projection. And that's kind of the biggest one with financial aid. So SC&M has a cost of attendance. We must establish a cost of attendance annually. The Department of Education tells each school how much they're allowed to award students in certain loans. So for this type of program, an academic year is 9 months, and the maximum we can provide to you for the program is $40,500 for every 9-month academic year. What I generally tell students, to make this as simple as we possibly can, if you were to borrow financial aid for only tuition and fees, your direct unsubsidized loans would cover the entire cost. Okay, so just the unsubsidized loans, it would cover everything and still have room, a lot of room. If you were to borrow aid to cover tuition fees and living expenses, then private student loans would be needed in addition to the direct unsubsidized loans. And so keep in mind, right, if we have tuition and fees, let's just hypothetically say an average of $27,000, $28,000 for a 9-month academic year, then if I multiply 8,500 for that 9-month period, you're looking at an additional 25,000, right, for living expenses. So unfortunately, that 40,500 won't cover the entire cost of attendance. So what our students typically do is they will borrow private loans, which are known as the Direct Plus loans under the Department of Education. Direct Plus loans, the way I like to call them, just so I remember what their benefits are, they're like cousins to the unsubsidized loans. They're still within the same family. They qualify for income-driven repayment plans, loan consolidation, and any other benefits under the Department of Education. So majority of our students will borrow Direct Plus loans unless, let's say, for example, they were able to avoid the private loans up until their last quarter at SCNM and realize, okay, I need a private loan because, you know, I'm going to borrow the full cost of attendance. Sometimes we have students borrow a private loan through any lender of their choice, and that's because maybe that particular lender will offer them a lower interest rate, where the Department of Ed has a fixed interest rate. But my conversation with students is that private loan with the private lender does not have the same repayment benefits as the Department of Education. So at the end of the day, you want to make sure that your monthly payment and whatever benefits that lenders offer you works for you, right? Because you're the one having to pay that money back. So whatever it is, whether it's a federal loan or a private loan, we're always going to review the terms and conditions to make sure that you know what type of loan you're borrowing, and at the very end, it benefits you, right? So making sure that you can afford it, making sure that if they're, like right now that we're in COVID times, the federal government has put in a mandated forbearance on all federal student loans. So that is applicable on all federal loans. Private loans, they don't have that same benefit. So things like that, we're going to definitely discuss and look into. And again, I can't stress enough, working through a financial aid projection with Claudia and I so that you truly understand your options and you know what you're borrowing.
Very good, good information. So Anna, can you talk a little bit about federal work study and how that works with SCNM?
Yeah, so federal work study is a need-based aid. It is the only type of aid from the Department of Ed that is need. So that is where I will be looking at your FAFSA to determine need-based eligibility. And what we're looking for is when I look at your FAFSA and I take a look at your expected family contribution, so it's that little magical number that appears at the end of your FAFSA completion. They call it family, well, on the form it's contribution, family contribution. That tells me whether or not you qualify for needs. So I'll give you a plain example. If your need is below SCNM's cost of attendance for a year. So our cost of attendance for a year is about 56, 57, and this includes living expenses. So if your expected family contribution is below that, you qualify for need. If it's above that, so let's just say hypothetically, you worked 2 years ago and you were making $100,000 and your expected family contribution comes back at, hypothetically, let's say $80,000, right? You don't qualify for need. So you would not qualify for federal work study for that first year. The following year, because it's a new FAFSA, we would take a look at your expected family contribution and determine your need once again. You qualify for federal work study, then you can work on campus or at 2 of our offsite clinics, which is at Roosevelt and Hamilton. And you can work throughout the quarter and earn money as you're fulfilling your hours. And the money you earn through federal work study, you do not have to pay it back. So, for example, and I know this is a lot of information, so bear with me. So let's just say hypothetically, you decide to work as a TA, as a tutor, or maybe in the medical center. We have many positions. Let's say you take one of them and you're working 2 hours a week and making $12 an hour. So I would calculate your federal work study award based on those numbers. And as you work each week, you submit your hours, and bi-weekly you start making a paycheck. And that is money you get to keep, and you don't have to pay it back to the federal government. One thing I will say is that federal work study is included in your cost of attendance, so it is not in addition to the $8,500. It's part of what you would get from your living expenses. But the really nice thing is, instead of getting that full award in a student loan, you get a portion of it in federal work study, and then of course the other portion in a student loan. 2 important things. Federal work study, definitely I'm going to encourage it. It's going to help you gain some experience being on site, being in your program of study, working with other physicians. We have students who will work with many of our faculty and physicians. And the other thing too is you're really saving some money by participating in the federal work study program. So just as an example of myself, when I was working as a federal work study student, by the time I graduated, I saved an average of $30,000 just by doing federal work study for 5 years of my program. So that's a lot of money. That's $30,000 I didn't have to borrow in student loans, right? Wow. And I was also a workaholic, so I was working more than I should have, but I didn't care. It was a really good opportunity. So a good opportunity for you guys. The other thing that I'm just going to throw in at you guys is, for those participating in federal work study, you can apply for food nutrition assistance through the state of Arizona. Of course, there's some processes, and I'm sure they're going to want to see that you're a student. And I don't believe, don't quote me on this, but I don't believe that you have to be a resident for 2 years of Arizona. I think for the simple fact of being a student, you're enrolled and participating in federal work study would perhaps qualify you for food nutrition assistance. So another little bit of savings towards your budget.
I have a couple follow-up questions just to clarify.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to go kind of a little bit back to the beginning. You were talking about that expected family contribution. And just to clarify, the word family, I think, is what has me confused, because again, you said this really doesn't have anything to do with your parents. It's about your return. So that you said that the $57,000 is where I was stuck. So with that, if I made less than $57,000 in 2018, I should qualify as an individual to work federal work studies. Am I understanding that correct?
Yes, so remember, the Fafsa is a universal document, and there's no distinguish between undergrad and graduate. That's the school's responsibility. So the FAFSA is going to have the same wording for undergrad, unfortunately. So even though it says family contribution, you are the family. So if it's just one, that is you.
I gotcha. And you mentioned getting a paycheck. Is that paycheck, does taxes and Medicaid and all that stuff, does Social Security come out of that paycheck?
The only thing that comes out is federal taxes, but you can waive state, Medicaid. There's none of that. None of the other taxes, nothing goes into that federal work study, just federal. And you can elect even the minimum percentage. So that's something that you would be working with HR. And really quick on that, so as a quarter one student, I am not going to approve federal work study for you. And the reason being is, you're entering a new program. I need you to get a sense of your academics, your personal schedule before you commit to a federal work study position. So starting in quarter two, by all means, you are welcome to apply for federal work study, and we do a job fair every single quarter. That's how you'll know what positions are available.
Aside from the financial qualifying need, is there a GPA qualifying need?
Good question. So for the TAs and tutors, you have to have a minimum of a 3.0 GPA just for TAs and tutors. Now, for the entire program, you have to have a minimum of a 2.0. So if you're below a 2.0, you're on probation and you would no longer be eligible to participate. But as long as you maintain that 2.0 and above, you can do any other federal work study position.
And the last thing I wanted to clarify is, I love your example of how you saved nearly $30,000 while you were federal work study. That's incredible, you overachiever, you. But so that I do understand that is, you mentioned this, it still comes out of your living expenses. So if you were to award me $8,500, I could do federal work study and I would only be borrowing $8,000, but because I'm working and getting that, I'm still getting my total $8,500. Sound kind of right?
Right. So that's a good example, Jane. So let's say that your total federal work study award is 500, right? So initially your disbursement for living costs would be 8,000, and now you have to work throughout the quarter to earn the $500, right?
Yep.
So your budget comes into play extremely important, because I tell students, if you need the full 8,500 up front at the beginning of the quarter, maybe federal work study is not going to be your best option, right? But if you can budget your finances and know that you're going to get paid that 500 throughout the quarter and it works out for you, then I would definitely encourage you to do federal work study. And know that the work you're doing under federal work study, that goes on your resume. So if you helped Dr. Langland with research, if you helped the medical center or the Near Reardon Center, all that experience you were doing as a federal work study student, that goes on your CV. So definitely, I'm gonna always encourage it.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, guys, sorry, I diverted from the chat bar a little bit. I'm gonna backtrack here and just touch real quickly. Jocelyn asks, are there on-campus job opportunities for non-work study students? And real quickly, I'm gonna say yes. Go ahead, Anna.
Yeah, there is. So if you don't qualify for federal work study, we don't have a whole lot, but there are a few positions on campus that do allow students to work in.
Earn a paycheck. In fact, our student ambassador position is a paid role. So
Yep.
I'm sure you guys have heard from our student ambassadors here or there, or hopefully. So there's an opportunity you can help us in the admissions department, and that is not a federal work study. That is a paid position above
Yep.
and separate. There's some questions in here about that food assistance program. And somebody's like, is that food stamps? What is that? I think that
Oh,
I did. I hit mute as I was talking. Can you elaborate at all on that? Because I'm not too familiar with that, but I've heard a little bit.
Yep. So it is like food stamps. I think now it's a little different, but that is money that the state will give you monthly to help with groceries. So we have students who will take advantage of the food nutrition assistance. And guys, I have students who will get $200, $250 a month for food. Why not?
Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly.
honestly, guys, it's okay. Like, it's money for groceries. And
Exactly.
I don't know about you guys, but where I live, right, food is going up. So
Yep.
it's not getting any cheaper. So anything to
Yep.
help you guys financially, take advantage of it.
Right.
Yep.
One that I want to go back to that I've skipped right over. Can you talk briefly about loan forgiveness programs?
Yeah, so federal government, for all derived staffer loans, so subsidized, unsubsidized, graduate plus loans are the private loans under the Department of Education. If you consolidate your student loans and include any Perkins loans, those would qualify also. So those are benefits under the Department of Ed, where they have loan forgiveness for income-driven repayment plans. And then they have the public service loan forgiveness program, where if you work for 10 years at a nonprofit or government agency, your loans are forgiven after 10 years. Where the income-driven repayment plans have loan forgiveness after 20 or 25 years, depending on which income-driven plan you select. So those are federal benefits, and your federal loans qualify for those.
Perfect. All right, I know we're butting right up against time. I'm so impressed with all your questions today. Linda's asking, is the cost of living high in Arizona that $8,500 is needed? So to me, I talk a lot about the affordability of Arizona, actually. Personally, that's one thing that I love about Arizona.
Right.
Is the cost of living, in my opinion, is actually very reasonable compared to other cities where I have lived. But again, if you want to explain a little further, that $8,500 is taking them at least 3 months. Like, how many weeks did you say that $8,500 is carried out?
Yeah, so it's 13 weeks essentially, right? And what we're looking at is our population, right? We are looking at the people we're serving. So you guys are adults, maybe with families, maybe not, maybe with pet families, right? Maricopa County is huge, and well, I say huge, right? Coming from Mexico City, it's not that big. But definitely we have students who live an hour away. We have students who commute longer, right? Maybe they have to pick up their children or other dependents. So, you know, we try again to be mindful of all the walks of life. And for some students, $8,500 may be a lot. For others, it might not. Maybe it's just enough, right? It just depends. So our goal again is to try to assist you guys as much as we possibly can. Again, I can't promise that I'm going to cover every expense you guys may have, right? There has to be some areas where maybe you're going to have to make some sacrifices, maybe not buy coffee every single day, right? Maybe make your own coffee at home. You know, but again, we try, but we also have to be very reasonable of who we're serving, and then of course where we're located. So it just depends on every single student.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You guys, this is excellent. I apologize. We are 1 minute over. I do see somebody's requesting a link to the site with more information on loan forgiveness. Is that in the financial aid information packet? Do you know, Anna?
It is. So I can, the admissions team can send you guys the financial aid packet, and then you guys can also reach out to me. There is a website through studentaid.gov. So studentaid.gov. This is the website from the Department of Education. And guys, this is I mean, if you guys already did your master promissory note and entrance counseling, you should be familiar with this site. It will have the loan forgiveness programs listed in there as well. But nonetheless, you guys can always reach out to Claudia and I, and we can navigate you a little bit better.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for hanging out. It's still 2 minutes over. Linda, don't worry. I saw your last question there. I'll email you some information that we've kind of compiled on housing that just identifies communities that are around our campus. At least get you started on that research and information. We have an apartment locator company that'll work with you. We have a realtor that can work with you. I'll send you a separate email for sure. Thank you, Ana Borjas. This really has been super informative, and thank you all for everyone's participation today. This has really been a lot of fun for us.
And I did put Anna and Claudia's email address in the chat bar, so feel free to reach out to both of them if needed.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, my dear. Good seeing you.
Yes.
Right, bye.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Bye.
Yeah.
See you next year.